I'm going to take off the coil bracket that's on the coil on the tractor, and I want to fit one of these coil brackets on, because the one on the tractor is that kind of a goldy kind of finish to it. It's a kind of a coating that's on it. I don't know, what would you call it. But this coil is from my 1968 Triumph T100C, something similar to that, just in red. And I'd say that's the original coiler one, definitely from that era, the original sticker on it. So I might go with this one. This one is a little bit worse for wear looking, and more importantly the screw in there is the head on it is a little bit dodgy, whereas the slot on that one's a lot better. So I might go take that off and fit it, because what's on the tractor at the moment is a little bit, it kind of stands out a little bit too much, and it looks a bit too new, and especially after fitting them two insulators onto it. So off with this, and I'll get it fitted on the other one. I'm just not overly fond of these type of finishes, simple as that, for no other reason. They look a bit too modern and showy, if you ask me. And what I might do is, I think you can buy them Lucas stickers that's on that old coil, and I'll fit one to this. At least this is just a plain black coil, there's nothing too fancy about it. I'll be able to put that sticker down there, and I might just make it look a little bit more correct. Small little detail. You know, I don't want that hanging too much on the wires. So I see that there's just a little, I get torque there, a rag. There's a little bit of oil coming out from in behind the coil. So that hole goes right in to where the tappets are. So it's no big deal. And what's on that now? The spring washer is actually in behind the bracket, and that's strange enough. So that's that. Get my better bracket. So this bracket, actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to just straighten it out. There, I'm just going to give him a tap of a hammer, and it'll just help straighten that a bit, or put it in the vise. So there's a little bit of oil coming out there, so I just have to wipe that off, and I'm just going to try this bracket for a fit. Make sure it's lining up with them two holes in the back there, and it does seem to be. When we tighten that bracket, it should be fine. These seem to be 8mm. I'm not sure were they ever Imperial. I always find an 8mm seems to fit them fairly well. I might have to go for a shorter screwdriver. I'm at a bit of an angle here, or I can remove it there. I don't need to put it into the stud there at all yet. Tighten this up a little bit. Get it a bit snugger, and then what that'll do is pull those two brackets closer together, and then we'll be able to get the holes to line up. So on with the spring washer now. On with the little nut, 7/16 UNF. Not many of them that size on this engine, I don't believe. I do believe, I should say. I don't think there's that many of them on this. And the bolt is actually UNC coarse thread. I think this originally had stud each side, and I swapped it one of them for this bolt for whatever reason, I'm not sure. Hard, awkward enough to get it started. Wonder am I lined up at all? I am. In fairness, working on the likes of this engine is a lot easier than working on a car. Working in an engine bay, at least there's nothing stopping you getting into the parts on this. Now, see how that works. 7/16 on this side here. Fits lovely. Snug them up. This doesn't need to be making an air connection to the engine, so it's not going to matter that much. But as I've seen on this side, oil was coming out, so I'll keep an eye on that. Make sure it's snug. And we can lift up the coil to about halfway. Get a smaller flathead screwdriver. I think them Lucas stickers that go on here, they're actually fairly expensive, but I do think since this coil is working and not overheating like some of the ones I did have, at least if I did put it on, I should get a good while out of it. Now I'll go about halfway, get it twisted right, where we want it, and then give the flathead screw a little twist. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a socket on my flathead bit into my 1/4 inch little socket. That'll get in there a little bit better than me, and of course the torch is needed. So that'll just make access a little bit better in there. Oh, so we're roughly have these two terminals straight across. Doesn't have to be savage tight, just to stop it moving, that's all. Now, that should do it. I also put a washer in on the end of that screw bolt. I didn't have one, just behind the nut. That's nice and snug. So this is what it was on it, kind of a nickel zinky coating, a bit standout, whereas this bracket kind of matches the patina of the distributor. One thing that's interesting about this distributor, now I'll try and get it to focus there, you can see 653. I know most of these were actually dated, so I wonder was this from an earlier tractor, June 53. So the model, there's a few numbers on it there. 4029B, is it 8 or B? Couldn't tell you. And there's D3A4, V151. So I wouldn't be surprised if that was from an earlier Ferguson 20. Now I'm looking for little bits of grey paint. I wonder is that one there? I'm not 100% certain, and I'm also not 100% certain if that kind of a gutter bowl setup there is original or not. But anyway, we have our two insulators on, and looking out for a third one, and maybe something to go over the end of that as well. I did put a bit of heat shrink at the end of it there, as it was bare. And yeah, these are just little tiny jobs that just help it these kind of things blend in a little bit more. The likes of that now, that kind of a coating seems to be on a lot of things like wheel nuts, and from what I can see it doesn't take very long for it to wear off. So this old coil would have been something similar as well. Would have been that sort of a coating, and sure you can see the way it goes after a while. It goes pure rusty. So that's okay. That can be going to my spares bin. Mind you, I'd sooner use that one than what was on it. In other news, the needle valve seems to be doing its thing because there's no more petrol around it. Another thing I'm after getting for this is I'm after ordering a good second-hand rocker shaft, because the rocker faces in this are just, they make too much noise. You probably heard it in the videos. It's a bit much. It gets worse as the engine warms. So I am going to fit that early next week. So that should be in one of the videos coming up. All going well, and hopefully then when I do the valve clearance on it, it will stay sounding the same and not be making more racket. But yeah, another thing I want to do one of the days as part of the video series, since it's called Daz's Den, is to do a little tour of some of the trinkets I have on the walls and hanging and stuff like that. But until then, I'm waiting for the rocker shaft, fit it, clean it, fit it, blow out all the oil galleries. I was having a bit of a mess around with the governor again. I think I finally have it set a lot better. I wasn't getting a whole lot of revs on it when I pulled back the throttle full. I'm now getting more than enough, getting 2,200 revs, and that's what it's meant to be according to the factory. And I know that where I went wrong, I was adjusting this screw down there, and that puts a bit of pressure, loads the spring on the governor, and you're meant to keep this this lever push back until you feel a bit of resistance. And I think I was actually, if you remember the videos, I was the other side and I waited for that to actually move forward. So in other words, I wasn't pushing back on it. So I pushed it back. I then adjusted my throttle rod to suit it, and I adjusted this long rod here so that it was pushing down on this rod and keeping it back to minimum tick over. So I suppose you live and learn. I think adjusting the governors on these is a bit of how we put it, fine art. The thermostat housing still needs a bit more flattening in there. It's still weeping a little bit every now and again. So when I'm doing my rocker shaft, I'm going to try and flatten this cast iron piece. Now the reason why it's hard to flatten it is that's a stud and it's very short. If I could remove the stud, I'd be able to get this nice and flat, but what's happening is I can't go over and back without hitting that stud, and it's too short for me to put on two nuts to remove it or to risk shearing it. And this surface under here is curved, so if I had to shear it, drill it out and put on a nut and bolt, it wouldn't look very good at all, especially with the curved surface underneath it. So a little bit more attention needed on that. But apart from that, hopefully the rocker shaft will sort out that issue.